Hello dear students, this is Dr. Shabana Begum, Associate Professor from the Department of Zoology, Maharani Science College for Women, Bangalore, presenting a lecture on the anatomy of human digestive system, part 3, pertaining to BSc Zoology 4th semester, Unit 3, under the paper entitled Comparative Anatomy, Human Anatomy, Cell Biology and Histology. Students, in my previous sessions, I had described the anatomical structures of the digestive organs such as the mouth, the teeth, tongue, salivary gland under part 1, and that of pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine and large intestine under part 2. So, in continuation with part 1 and part 2, today I will explain the anatomical structures of the next part, that is the accessory digestive organs called the pancreas, liver and gallbladder. The content would be the major organs of the digestive system, the accessory digestive organs such as the liver, pancreas and gallbladder, and the learning objective will be at the end of the lesson the students will be able to learn the anatomical features of digestive system and its associated organs such as these associate accessory organs or glands, that is the liver, the pancreas as well as the gallbladder. So now let us learn about the pancreas and its anatomical structure. So pancreas, as you all know, is a compound racemose gland. It is pale grey in color and weighs about 60 grams. It is about 12 to 15 centimeters long and is situated in the epigastric and left hypochondriac regions of the abdominal cavity. It's also called a heterocrine gland because it produces several important hormones from its endocrine part, including insulin, glucagon, somatostatin and pancreatic polypeptide, all of which circulate in the blood, and also several digestive enzymes from the exocrine part helping in the digestion of biomolecules. Fine. We can always say pancreas is a soft tadpole-shaped or carrot-shaped gland that extends across the abdomen from its tail, which is abutting the spleen, to its head, which is encircled by the C-shaped duodenum. And most of the pancreas is hereditary. It's a retroperitoneal and lies deep to the greater curvature of the stomach. So anatomically, the pancreas is divided into a head, neck, body and a tail. Fine. The head, which is the broad portion, lies within the curve of the duodenum, I just said. The body lies behind the stomach and the tail, which just reaches the spleen, lies in front of the left kidney. The abdominal aorta and the inferior vena cava lie behind the gland. So within the pancreas are the acini, which are clusters of secretory cells surrounding ducts. These cells are chock full of rough endoplasmic reticulum, that is, it has full of rough endoplasmic reticuli, and exhibit deeply staining zymogen granules at their apices, which contain the digestive enzymes they manufacture. Fine, you can say the pancreatic acini has walls of which consists of secretory cells. Each lobule is drained by a tiny duct and these unite to form the main duct called the duct of Werson. This duct extends the whole length of the gland and open into the duodenum at its midpoint. Fine. So just before entering the duodenum, the pancreatic duct, which is also called as the main duct, or duct of Wirsing joins the bile duct to form ampulla. Fine. So the duodenal opening of the ampulla is controlled by the sphincter of Oddi. The islets of Langerhans, which are the endocrine parts of the pancreas, are distributed throughout the substance of the pancreas, and they secrete the hormones insulin and glucagon, and consists of little collections of the different types of cells, which are called as the alpha cells, beta cells, delta cells, gamma cells, pp cells, f cells, etc. So you can mention the pancreas also has an endocrine function. Scattered amidst the acini are the more lightly staining pancreatic islets, which are called as islets of Langerhans, which I just said. These mini endocrine glands release the two hormones that are the insulin and glucagon that play an important role in carbohydrate metabolism. Fine. So the blood supply to the pancreas is mentioned here. So the two arteries, that is superior mesenteric artery and splenic artery, supply pure blood to the pancreas, while the superior mesenteric vein and splenic vein will bring back the deoxygenated blood from the pancreas. Now let us learn some functions of the pancreas. And most important function is it is involved in blood sugar control and metabolism within the body. Fine, that is important. Apart from that, because of the digestive juices it secretes, which are rich in enzymes as endocrine exocrine part, it's involved in the digestion of proteins, carbohydrates and lipids. Fine, you can mention the pancreas is a gland having two different types of secretions, as internal secretion, such as the hormones which are secreted, insulin from the beta cells, then these absorbed directly into the blood and brings about regulation of glucose level in the blood. That is, it enables tissues to use the sugar. The hormone called glucagon, secreted by alpha cells of islets of Langerhans, brings about glycogenolysis, that is catabolism or breakdown of glycogen to form glucose. The hormones called as somatostatin, secreted by delta cells, are also found, which try to inactivate or stop the secretions of alpha and beta cells or their own activity. There are cells also called as PP cells, which are also called pancreatic polypeptide cells secretions. Fine. Apart from that, you should mention as an external secretion from exocrine part of pancreas, which leaves the gland by the pancreatic duct, is where important digestive juice containing enzymes such as the pancreatic amylase or amylopsin, which converts starch to maltose, pancreatic lipase or steaopsin, which splits fats into fatty acids and glycerol, also known as glycerin, trypsin and chymotrypsin, which are also proteolytic enzymes converting proteoses and peptones into amino acids, the end product of digestion of the proteins. Then carboxypeptidases, also proteolytic, the DNases and RNases, converting DNA and RNA into nucleotides. Hence, you can say the pancreatic juice is called complete digestive juice, as it helps in the digestion of starch, proteins, fats, nucleic acids, etc. And the pH of the pancreatic juice is about 8.4, which is highly alkaline in nature. So next, the organ liver, let us learn about it and its anatomy and some of its function. You can mention now about the liver as the largest gland of the body and weighs between 1 and 2.3 kg, but as an average you can mention 1.5 kg, and is heavier in males than in females. It is situated in the upper part of the abdominal cavity, occupying the greater part of the right hypochondriac region and part of the epigastric region and extending into the left hypochondriac region. is an organ which is found only in vertebrates. It detoxifies various metabolites, synthesizes proteins, and produces biochemicals which are necessary for the digestion. How about the relations? That means the organs which surround the liver are the anteriorly by diaphragm and anterior body abdominal wall, then posteriorly the esophagus, inferior vena cava, aorta, gallbladder, vertebral column and diaphragm, laterally by the lower ribs and diaphragm, superiorly by diaphragm and anterior abdominal wall, inferiorly the stomach, bile ducts, duodenum, hepatic flexure of colon, right kidney. So all these are the various other organs which surrounds the liver. And in this diagram it's clearly seen that the liver has 4 primary lobes. Fine. Typically the liver is said to have 4 primary lobes. The largest of these is the right lobe, which is visible on all liver surfaces and separated from the smaller left lobe by a deep fissure. Fine. Mesentery called falciform ligament separates the right and left lobes and suspends the liver from the diaphragm and anterior abdominal wall. Apart from this too, there are also 2 more small lobes, the posterior most caudate lobe and the quadrate lobe, which lies inferior to the left lobe. So there you can see, apart from these 2 structures, that is the right lobe, the left lobe and the falciform ligament, there is a green rounded structure which is called as gallbladder, which stores bile, you all know, which is present inferior to the right lobe of the liver. There are ligaments called coronary ligaments and ligamentum teres also seen in this slide. Fine. I have just mentioned about the various anatomical details of the liver. Once again, you can see in this particular slide also, as I explained, I said liver is the largest organ of the body, is the gland, and it is reddish brown wedge shaped organ weighing about 1.4 to 1.6 kg. Then a connective tissue capsule called Glissen's capsules covers it, and the 4 lobes I mentioned are the right lobe, left lobe, caudate and the quadrate lobes. You can mention that in the undersurface presents transverse fissure, the surface being broken down by the passage of the vessels. It is made up of hepatic lobules. That means the whole parenchyma of the liver is made up of a number of hexagonal or polyhedral shaped structures which are called as hepatic lobules, which are composed of cells called hepatocytes, and also it shows ramification of the vessels of the liver. That is, the hepatic artery enters into the liver and divides into a number of interlobular arteries. Then there are also the hepatic sinusoids, which are the ramified blood vessels again. Then also I mentioned about the falciform ligament, which divides the liver into a left and the right lobe. For 1 mark they may ask any question from the topic, so you should really memorize some of the important scientific terms. So next is some of the functions. Before that, the blood supply to the liver is by means of hepatic artery and hepatic portal vein, while the venous drainage is through the hepatic veins. So what are the functions which the liver performs? So some of the functions which I'll just read out, you can just go through it later also. You can mention the liver deaminates the amino acids, and it removes nitrogenous portion from the amino acids which are not required for the formation of new proteins, and it forms a urea from this nitrogenous portions. Apart from that, it breaks down the nucleoprotein of worn out cells of the body to form uric acid, which is excreted in the urine. The liver converts glucose to glycogen in the presence of insulin hormone and changes liver glycogen back to glucose in the presence of glucagon hormone secreted by alpha cells of islets. It desaturates fat, that is, it converts stored fat to a form in which it can be used by the tissues to provide energy. You can mention the next function as it produces heat, that is, the liver uses a considerable amount of energy and has a high metabolic rate and produces lot of heat. It is the main heat producing organ of the body. Next, it secretes bile. You know what bile is? I just said bile is the secretion of the hepatocytes. So the liver cells called hepatocytes synthesizes the constituents of the bile from the mixed arterial and venous blood in the sinusoids. These include bile salts, bile pigments, cholesterol, etc. Then the liver stores the vitamins like vitamin B12. This vitamin is absorbed through the wall of the small intestine and is transported in the portal circulation to the liver, where it is stored until it is needed in the bone marrow for the development of formation of erythrocytes. Liver stores iron derived from the diet and by the breakdown of worn out erythrocytes in the spleen. The spleen is also known as what? It's known as the graveyard of RBCs. Liver stores a number of vitamins. Again, you can say vitamin A, D, E and K, which have been taken into the body in the diet. It synthesizes vitamin A, very important here. This vitamin can be formed in the liver from carotene, the provitamin found in some plants. For example, in carrots and green leaves of vegetables. The liver forms the plasma proteins from the available amino acids, and these include the albumin, globulin, prothrombin and fibrinogen, which are also called as the blood clotting factors. Finally, you can mention the liver detoxicates drugs and other noxious substances such as toxins, which are produced by the microorganisms. Because the liver contains cells called Kupffer cells, phagocytes, which line the hepatic sinusoids. They try to destroy damaged erythrocytes and foreign substances by means of phagocytosis. So the next organ which we have to study today is the gallbladder. Fine. So the gallbladder is the structure you have studied in your lower classes. So the gallbladder is a small hollow muscular membranous sac, which is an organ where bile is stored and concentrated before it is released into the duodenum part of the small intestine. It is a thin-walled green muscular sac which is approximately 10 centimeter long and that snuggles in a shallow fossa on the ventral surface of the liver. Its rounded head protrudes from the inferior margin of the liver, which you saw and you can even see now in the first diagram of this slide. And it stores bile that is not immediately needed for digestion and concentrates it by absorbing some of its water and ions. When empty or when storing only small amounts of bile, its mucosa is thrown into honeycomb-like folds that, like the rugae of the stomach, allow the organ to expand as it fills. When its muscular wall contracts, bile is expelled into its duct. The duct is called as the cystic duct and then flows into the bile duct. And the covering of the gallbladder, like most of the liver, is by means of visceral peritoneum. And the bile secretion is under the control of two hormones called the secretin and cholecystokinin. In case of humans or in men, the shape of the gallbladder is pear, P-E-A-R, pear shaped, and its tip opens into the cystic duct and divide it into three sections: the fundus, the body, and the neck. You can even mention the storage capacity of the gallbladder is about 50 ml. That means about 50 ml of the bile juice is stored in the gallbladder. See the beautiful picture like a hammer it looks. The gallbladder with the three regions, that is the neck, the body, and the fundus seen clearly. There is a duct of the gallbladder which is called as the cystic duct, a thin duct which joins the common bile duct, and ultimately this stool opens into the lumen of the duodenum. Finally, the blood supply to the gallbladder is by means of the cystic artery, and the venous drainage is provided by the cystic vein. The main functions of the gallbladder is to store the bile. It's also called gall. Bile is also called as gall, which is needed for the digestion of fats in food. Bile flows through small vessels into the larger hepatic ducts and ultimately through the cystic duct into the gallbladder, where it is stored. So fine, so much you have to mention about the functions of the gallbladder too. Fine, maybe for 1 mark, 3 mark, or 5 marks, some of the questions will be asked from this particular session. Fine. The next, before completing, I just wanted to explain the physiology of digestion in a gist. So here you can start. The mouth is the beginning of the digestive tract. Chewing breaks the food into pieces that are most easily digested, while saliva mixes with the food to begin the process of breaking. From pharynx, food travels in the form of bolus to the esophagus or swallowing tube. It's also called as conducting tube. By means of series of contractions called peristalsis, the esophagus delivers food to the stomach. The lower esophageal sphincter keep food from passing backwards into the esophagus. The stomach secretes acid and powerful enzymes that continue the process of breaking down the food. When it leaves the stomach, food is in the consistency of a liquid or paste. From there, the food moves to the small intestine in the form of chyme, CHYME. It continues the process of breaking down food by using enzymes released by the pancreas and bile from the liver. Bile is a compound. Bile is a compound that aids in the digestion of fat. Already we have discussed it, and eliminates waste products from the blood itself. Then by means of peristalsis, which is also at work in this organ, there is movement of food through and mixing it up with digestive secretion take place. Then the duodenum is largely responsible for continuing the process of breaking down food, with the jejunum and ileum being mainly responsible for the absorption of nutrients into the bloodstream. The pancreas secretes enzymes into the small intestine, which breaks down the protein, fat, and carbohydrates from the food what we eat. Stool or waste left over from the digestive process is passed through the colon by means of peristalsis once again, first in a liquid state and ultimately in solid form as the water is removed from the stool. A stool is stored in the sigmoid colon region until a mass movement A mass movement empties it into the rectum once or twice a day. Finally, the slide at the end of the talk shows you the references. So this reference, that is the textbook of Principles of Anatomy and Physiology by Gerald J. Tortora and Nicholas P., will be easily available in most of the libraries of the colleges. If you find it, you can go through this. Fine? Okay, thank you.